Welcome to episode 49 of the IT Fundamentals Training Series. My name is Mark Halpton. I am your host for this training series. And today we're going to get rolling with understanding application design concepts, the support platforms, and things that are associated with those applications, understanding the purpose of the software. So here we go, episode 49. Welcome to episode 49 of the IT Fundamentals Training Series. My name is Mark Halpton. I am your host, and today we are going to talk about the applications architecture. So if you turn with me into page 254 in your book and following, there's a lot of words on these pages and a lot of things to say about what goes on with applications. So first of all, one of the things that we need to understand is in this book, or when we discuss things, there are different words that essentially mean the same thing. So application or mobile app or those types of terms are all interchangeable. So you could use the word software, application, or program is what the book says is interchangeable. But I'm going to tell you that mobile app, all those different other types of terms are also the same thing. And when we talk about what an application is, we need to understand that an application is nothing more than a piece of software that has a purpose, even if it's just a game or a communication platform. It has some purpose that is layered on top of the operating system that is designed to engage with the user. So usually the operating system is designed to allow the applications to engage with the users, even though there are times when you may run and do things on the application itself, or there may be application lets. In other words, small functions that you believe are part of the operating system, but are really applications that are just built into it. So for example, if you go look at the calculator, you go down to your search bar, and this is where I get to share my screen and show you what I'm talking about. So if you were to go and go down on the search bar down here, and you were just to type calc, you pull up the calculator. That is actually an application that is running, that just is an applet, if you will, inside of Windows. It is not Windows itself. It's just a function that's built into Windows. All right, so application design concepts, we need to understand what we're talking about when we talk about applications. And yes, you're looking at CNN on my screen and using the Chrome browser, because I wanted to show you what the behind the scenes of of an application, of a web application looks like. So in this case, we're using Chrome, which itself is an application. It's a web browser, which is a window into a cloud-based server someplace that is serving up another application. In this case, it happens to be the CNN website that is serving up. So if we take a look at in Chrome particularly, you go to more tools and then you go to developer tools. What will pop up over here on the right hand side are a whole bunch of funny looking things that go on down through here, and this is called the programming, or the HTML. Hypertext markup language is what HTML stands for. But this is all the code that is running behind the scenes here in order to make this website show up in front of you. So just to kind of look at a couple of things that are going on here. So this is a script begin and a script end. And if you look at it right here, script beginning just writes the word script in brackets or parens. But whenever there's a slash on the end of script, that means the script is done running. So it stops running that routine. So we want to take a look at what is that script. Well, it's satellite run script one, function, event, target, promise, all those kinds of things. Basically what this is here is this is an ad that's running up in this space right here on the CNN website. And if if we were really enterprising, or in my case, a hacker, I could get in here and temporarily change some of the stuff. If I was a really good hacker, I can get in there and permanently change it. Taking a look at a couple of other things here, this is called a head or header. So it's beginning of the head, the end of the head. And again, if you drop that arrow down, it shows you all the things. So we're looking at the fact that it runs a script that's it's in JavaScript, and it calls out to lightning.cnn.com, blah, 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 blah. This JS stands for JavaScript. So this is the code that is running behind CNN here. And again, if you wanted to see that, you go to click on the three dots at the top of right hand corner of Chrome, go to more tools and go to developer tools. So you can run different things in here to see what's computed, and the margins on the screen, and how that shows up. The layout here is identified through code, just all sorts of stuff. So you can kind of go through there and see what's going on. If you want to close that down, you just click the X up at the top in order to do that. So that just gives you kind of an overview, understanding the application architecture and the functions that go on with that inside that application architecture. All right, so for right now, we're going to stop the screen sharing right now, just to pull it back on me a little bit. I've probably got too much stuff going on there anyway. I don't want to distract you, but let's go on and talk about application design concepts. So we just showed you a little bit of the code of what goes on. That's the architecture, if you will, that's behind the scenes of it. But applications are designed in a very methodical and programmatic way, meaning that there is a project that's involved in that, and there's very specific steps. And in that specific steps is called SDLC, or Software Development Lifecycle. And that's where your application designing occurs inside of that space. There's different ways to design the applications. You can do them in formats that are in various development cycles, if you will, that are called waterfall or other similar types of design methodology that's like that. But if you read that application design concept section there, you can kind of get an idea of what they're asking you to look at in regards to the IT fundamentals piece. And bottom line, what they want you to know there is that, hey, a piece of an application is a piece of code that runs and developed by software developers, and it focuses on the best way to make the application do what it's supposed to do. That's what developers do, is they try to make it as develop the code and then make it as fundamentally efficient as possible. So then we look at software platforms, okay? And there's a number of different kinds of platforms depending on the type of operating system that you're running against. Now, most Windows systems, or Windows applications, I should say, will run against most relatively current Windows systems, going all the way back to Windows Vista. So and the reason for that is because the underlying code, the underlying software development that occurs inside of Windows has been similar since then. You go back beyond Vista and you might start running into some problems, but Vista 7, 8, 10, and 11 are essentially all the same type of application with versions better that enhance it. So Windows does that, whereas some of the other Linux or Mac OS platforms, you really do have to buy new software or get major upgrades whenever the OSs are upgraded as well. So whenever you're using a piece of software that's designed for one particular type of OS, that's called a single platform software. So in other words, it's specifically designed for running on the Windows operating system or the Mac OS or the Ubuntu Linux type of operating system. So in a different type of scenario, well, let me say this: a single platform type of software is the type that you would install locally on your computer. So it's designed for exactly the operating system that you use there. Now, there's another type of application that's called a cross-platform software, and that was whenever the locally installed application will work on both Windows and Mac. Now, this is how most software that's actually installed on a computer these days is in cross-platform. And what they'll do is they'll just make minor modifications in order for it to operate on the Windows versus the Mac OS. Typically, a single platform type of software used to be that, Apple itself makes like Keynote or different kinds of Apple specific products, and they only run on the on the Apple product, or way back in the day, again, dating myself, but way back in the day, Microsoft Office only ran on Windows platforms, which they were very capable of doing, because it was, again, Windows is 95% of all the operating systems that are out there for desktop use. And so it's very easy for them just to go at a single platform scenario. But they eventually did bring it into a cross-platform scenario. And actually what they did is they created two single platform products to deliver to the Mac OS versus the Windows OS. But a true cross-platform type of scenario is one where you could it's basically the same software, looks slightly different, and you could install it on either either type of operating system, depending on which one they tell you to download it for. All right. Another question that developers always run into is, how do we want to deliver the software? Do we want to deliver it as an application across the internet, as a web, or do we want to deliver it where it has to be locally installed on the computer? So, that's one of the key things that they have to think about when they're designing the software. And typically, productivity software for businesses, for e-commerce type of things, enterprise E2E commerce, things like that, that will be done through a web application where it's pretty agnostic. You just have to have a browser to run, and you can run that browser. I could run Chrome, I could run Windows Edge, Microsoft Edge, I can run the Safari browser, all of them, and still see the same thing when I'm using a true cross-platform web type of application. So one of the things they have to decide is how they're going to deliver that software. Is it going to be installed locally, or is it going to be a web-based software? And you can look at the book and read that and get more in-depth detail. But that's basically the question that software designers ask themselves when they're developing the architecture and looking at things. All right, so application architecture models. If you're following along, I'm now on page 258. And again, I apologize, there's really not a lot to show you on the screen, but I will show you when I can. But application architecture models, there's a few of them out there. There's what they call 3-tier models, where there's a presentation tier, a business logic tier, and a data tier. Now, what we mean by that, those are some big terms there, but what we mean by that is that, especially in web design, you would have a web server, you would have a database server, and then an application server that's running. So lots of times your web server will be in what's called a demilitarized zone, or a DMZ. And those types of scenarios are situations where, hey, if the hacker gets to that, we're hoping they don't get to the data. They're hoping that we don't get to the presentation, or I'm sorry, the business logic layer, where the actual application is interacting with the data and manipulating it and running. And so we're putting the presentation layer out there pretty much as as fodder in lots of those cases. But your presentation layer on page 259 is looking at those are your interface, so your web interface and so on and so forth. But then you move down to the business logic, and that's where the back end commands are processed. So if you're looking at a web page and you're typing in your name to do a search against like a tax record, or against some sort of record on the government website, what you would do is you type your name into the presentation layer, what you see. Once you hit enter, that would transmit that data backwards into the business logic layer. It would run some particular code that's back there on that business logic layer, and then it will go and retrieve the data that it's looking for. So the business logic layer is where it would run a query. Then it would go back into the data layer. It would retrieve that stored data, pull it back into the business logic layer, and the logic would make sure it's in the right format that it's supposed to be seen in, and then it puts it all back up there on the web page for you. And you're probably thinking to yourself, well, how in the world does that all happen in such quick time? Well, it does. It happens very quickly for lots of different reasons, including caching of data and other similar types of functions. So that is your typical model in what's called a 3-tier architecture model, and that's the one that the IT fundamentals really want you want you to learn and want you to pay attention to. All right. Moving on to software management best practices. So in this type of situation, um, you have to consider whether you're going to install the program and what's necessary from a rights perspective to install the program on the computer, whether or not you need to have firewalls and all those compatibility functions. Is it compatible with the RAM? Is it compatible with the Intel processor that you have, or an AMD processor? Is it compatible with the operating system, and so on and so forth? So these are all questions that you kind of have to work through if you're developing the software and working through that. All right, and then we're going to wrap up here on this segment with software licensing, and you definitely need to look at page 262 and understand the licensing methods there that are available. Shareware is software that's it's usually provided as a free trial. So shareware has a really bad name because back in the day, shareware was originally developed and literally as what we call open source software right now, where we talked about open source when we were talking about the OSs a little bit, where the operating system base code of Linux, for example, is free, but people have further developed it and turned it into Ubuntu or Sun OS and things along those lines, where they now charge for it. Well, shareware back in the day, people would go ahead and develop it, and then they would put it out there on the web, and lots of people would download it and think that it was free for use, and it really wasn't, and it was an uncontrolled space. So really, shareware, you need to understand that definition. It is not free. It is a free trial, and it's with the expectation you'll pay for it at some point along the line. So just kind of keep that in mind, that shareware is not free, even though a lot of people believe it is. Single use program is a commercial software in which there is one license that restricts the use onto one particular computer. Sometimes those one particular computer could actually be installed on 10 different computers, but they have this thing called concurrent license, which is the next thing on the list here that they're going to talk about. So single use is whenever you can install it on one computer, it can only be used on that computer. But a concurrent license means that you can install it on, let's say, 50 different computers, but you can only use it for the number of concurrent licenses. In other words, the number of concurrent licenses means how many times that you can use it simultaneously. So if I install it on 50 computers, but I have 5 concurrent licenses, then I can only use that software 5 places at any given time. And then, when somebody shuts down the software, say the 5th person shuts down the software, the next guy or gal can come in and start using that software. Then there's campus licenses or group licenses or corporate licenses, and that's when a business typically will buy a large capacity license. Lots of times they still have to define the numbers that they're going to, or the roundabout numbers, like 100 to 200 or 500 to 1,000 or something along those lines. And then that corporation can install that software as many times as they need to up to that point. And there is a little bit of that, because it's a contractual scenario. There is a little bit of that that is goodwill, if you will, meaning it's for example, if Microsoft gives you the Windows operating system in an enterprise environment, and you buy licenses for 500 users, Microsoft is expecting that you do not go to 501 without paying for the next tier. Sometimes they'll allow you for a 10% or even a 15, 20% margin, meaning that you can go up above the 500 by 10 or 15%, knowing that the next tier takes you to 1,000, because many businesses don't, for example, want to pay for 1,000 licenses when they're only using 550 licenses. So there's that little bit of a fudge factor sometimes, not always. And you need to take a look at the license agreement and the end user license that exists. Every piece of software has what's called an end user license agreement. There is that is frequently available for you to see inside of the software itself. And I'm trying to bring one up here. So if let me share my screen real quick here with you. Yeah, I'll share it right back up. All right, so I'm showing you right now. And I'll just back it out. So this is my Microsoft Outlook. There's nothing secret on there. If I go to File, and then I go to Office Account, sometimes if you go to File or you go to View and About a product, that's where it's located as well. But you can see right here, it says Show Additional Licensing Information. So this is subscribed to myself at commonsensesecurity.net. I can update my license. I can manage the account. But here, if I wanted to, I see some of the license data here. We could take a look here at the Outlook license. Any third-party notices. These are the license terms right here, and you could click on this, for example, this is a web link, and it should take you to a support page that talks to you a little bit more about licenses. So you can see these licenses quite frequently inside of the software. Again, we're looking at our friends over here at Google Chrome. If you click on Help and you go look at About Google Chrome here, this is an open source software. It's made possible by the Chromium project, an open source software, and so the terms of service is actually your license agreement here. So it last modified on 1 January 21, blah 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 blah. These are your license terms as it's related to the Chrome browser here. And this one here, it's showing all the different credits that exist, and here you can click on all the little sub products that are inside of Chrome have a license of their own. So like right here, the Puppeteer Replay has its own license, and that's what an end user license agreement looks like. It is all legalese that's in there. And if you've ever written one of these, I've written a few of them actually, but if you've ever read one of these, you will probably fall asleep in doing so. So if you're in need of counting sheep one night, and you're not able to get to sleep, by counting those sheep, perhaps pulling up a end user license agreement for software and making yourself read through this, you'll be asleep by 30 seconds in. So anyway, that's an important piece of understanding and licensing, because if you do go over the licensing, you can, if it's a charge for type of scenario, you can in fact pretty much mess yourself up, especially if you're a business owner. You could get fined. I've known a couple of people been aware of a couple of people, I should say, that have gone to jail. Those are habitual offenders. People are trying to get around the whole thing, and perhaps even earn financially off of it, earn some money. So those are some of the things you have to be aware of, is when you're violating those types of things. All right, so the last thing that we want to talk about in this whole piece is installing and uninstalling software. And so I'm going to share my screen again here with that. Now, in order to uninstall software, again, we're going to focus on Windows here. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to look at installed applications. So you type in the search bar, you type installed apps. And what will happen is that a list of all the installed applications that will come up on your screen. Now, if you wanted to uninstall a piece of software, like for example, I want to uninstall Cortana for the Microsoft Corporation. I don't want that on my computer. I would click over on the right-hand side, these three little deals here, and I would go uninstall. Well, look, my uninstall is grayed out, so I'm going to look at advanced options instead, and I'm going to say, you know what, I'm never going to allow that thing to run in background app permission. So basically, I'm terminating the Cortana running on my computer from Microsoft. It will still show here in the installed apps, but I am removing that from being able to operate the next time I reboot. Here's another one: get help from Microsoft Corporation. I'm an IT professional. I typically don't need help. Okay, well, I'm going to do this again. I'm going to go and turn it off and not use it If I need help, I'll just hit a web page. But this thing's running in the background. It's taking resources on your computer. So this is what we call fine tuning the computer. And from this perspective is just simply disabling the software. But here's a product I do want to uninstall. So I click on the three dots over here, and then I would click uninstall, and I would verify that I want to uninstall. And what would happen is in the background, I'm actually issuing code that goes through and uninstalls that HP software, and it's that simple to do. Now, I think we're probably also all familiar with downloading a piece of software from the internet and installing it on your computer. But just for those of you that aren't, let's pull up an executable. So this Topaz Photo AI 2.0 MSI, this is a downloaded product that I brought down onto my computer to install a local copy of that Topaz. So if I double click on it, what will happen is that it will generate the setup process. So the first thing I needed to do to get this is go out to Topaz and download the software. Once it was downloaded to my computer, then I double click on that MSI file or an EXE file. EXEs are a little dangerous. The MSIs are packages, whereas EXEs are executable type of files. So do be careful with that, because sometimes they can contain a virus or whatnot. But it will then guide me through the setup process. So the very first thing, it says, welcome to Topaz AI. Are you ready to keep going? Yep. They walk you through this thing called a setup wizard. So I'll click next. I'll tell it what I want it to do. Now, notice here that one of the options for us is to remove the software. Okay, I'm going to get rid of these background pieces for us so we can focus on what's going on here. That is one way to install this product from your computer as well. The other thing that this allows us to do is repair an installation. And that's what I'm going to do in this case. If the product was not already installed on my computer, there would also be another button here that would basically allow me to install the product. But because it already knows that the product's on my computer, did a real quick check when I went from here to here, did a real quick check, and it says, oh, you've already got it. So what are you trying to do? You're trying to get rid of it, or are you trying to repair it? So we're going to just run a repair real quick. And the repair function is very much like the installation. It's going through the entire MSI or the package, and it's validating that the information is installed correctly, and all the components are good and everything. And so as you can see what's going on here, the status bar, this is exactly what goes on during an installation process. All these files are running, they're copying the new files and so on and so forth, and installing that in there. Now I'm going to go ahead and hit cancel on this because I don't want to finish it and mess up my my software package. Plus, I don't want you to have to sit here for another half an hour. Literally, that's how long it takes this product to install, and have to go about doing it. But that wizard will step you through the process. All right, there we go for the day. That is episode 49, and we will come back to you on Friday with episode 50. And wow, we're hitting 50 already. Hey, wait, 50 is not a bad number, at least not in age. That means I got another 50 years to go. All right. So again, if you want to contact me, feel free to do so. MHOUPT@commonsensesecurity.net. Happy to talk to you. Happy to chat with you. Keep you going on this process, and hopefully you're learning something. And reach out and let us know what you need help with. Talk to you later. Thanks much.